just doesn't hit the same. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I am Zachary Smith. That is not Alan Saunders, and it will not be Alan Saunders until the 21st of July. Yeah, no Alan on the podcast all of next week. Obviously not today, but it's a Friday, which means we got DB joining us. DB, how we doing?
It's good to be in the house. I'm excited for the weekend, man. It's been a long week for the boys, so I'm definitely excited to talk some ball. And then get on to the weekend. And I'm sure a lot of people, as they're watching this video, are headed home on their way to their weekend. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. A couple weeks away from training camp. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Alan will be back for that. Obviously, a morning rush. Afternoon drive, and then we're going to do an SN Plus subscribers only live stream that Monday, the 21st, leading in to the week of training camp. Very excited for that. But yeah, a lot of business to take care of. But that's a good point. A lot of people probably, by the time they're watching or listening to this is the start of their weekend, and we're very honored that anybody gives us a watch or listen to kick off their weekend. I'm actually in that same boat as you in terms of really looking forward to this weekend more than I typically do. I think like last week, short week, had Friday off because of the 4th. The previous week, I only worked Thursday and Friday because I was coming back from vacation. So like this is the first full week that I had in a little bit. So yeah, it definitely felt super long comparatively.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum. Like I haven't had I've been really at it hard these last 4 weeks with work and just everything got going on. Haven't had really a break. So I'm excited. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to make it up for training camp. So I'm excited about that to be able to get away for a little bit and kind of
what time frame you looking at?
It'll be somewhere around my birthday. So it's going to be, I'm hoping to make it up for 2-3 days, but still kind of a work in progress. There's just a lot of stuff I got to get figured out, but I'm hoping to make it for sure.
I only want to be there for the Friday Night Lights. That's when Alan wants me up there for. That's when Pat said I should be up there for. I'm not doing those 155s. I hate it.
Yeah.
So I got no interest in doing that. I'd love to be up there for Friday Night Lights. I know a lot of people within my friend group, social media, that will be there. So
yeah, I did that last year, and it was a good time. It was definitely fun. The practice was definitely a lot of energy. It's a different type of practice and I like that. Tomlin and the coaching staff kind of ramps things up with it being this cool spectacle. It's a lot of excitement, and I definitely enjoyed myself. And I'm hoping to make it back. I would love to get to that practice again this year. So
yeah. All right. Anyways, we're about 3 minutes into this and haven't discussed. Well, I guess training camp could fall into the bucket of talking Steelers, but let's actually get to some questions here that I put out for on social media. The audience is always so great. Alan actually, not a question, I guess. Well, I guess kind of a question. He wants us to discuss how great of a guy Alan Saunders really is. And by the way, he ratioed me with this response. I got more likes than my original post did. I told Al, I was thinking we would say all the great things about Alan that we could, and then we'll end the episode. So this has been another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive for DB.
Yeah, we'll see y'all next week.
No, but in all seriousness, I literally would not be here. And when I say here, I mean in this room, in the house that I bought, if it wasn't for Alan. Legitimately, this opportunity, this podcast is a big reason that I was able to be in a position to do so. So genuinely, I don't say this lightly. This podcast and Alan bringing me in to do this podcast 100% changed my life. So big shout out to Alan as he enjoys his vacation.
Heck yeah.
That's all we're going to say about Alan. That was too much anyway. Completely on the other side of this, I feel like we got to get to something from your guy here, and this is not related to right now, but Nick Martin wants to know your thoughts on the 2026 receiver class as we sit here today.
I mean, I am intrigued.
Have you looked at it much?
Yeah, I wrote an article about it a couple weeks ago. I think July 3rd. I'm trying to go back and look, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of intrigued by it. I don't necessarily think it's as good as some of the classes we had 2, 3, 4 years ago, going into the season. But I really went into it just trying to find different archetypes of players that I think would fit with DK in that wide receiver 2 slot. Couple of names that I had kind of seen live watchings. I always, throughout the college football season and the draft season and stuff, I will like put guys who aren't in the draft in like a note section in my phone, just like, hey, you need to go back and watch this guy in the summer. You need to pay attention to this dude. Kind of just like when did I first like notice this person? So some of those receivers that I watched were guys like that, like Denzel Boston from Washington. He kind of broke out last year once all those guys went to the league. Antonio Williams has kind of been a player that's been on the radar for a while. He had a breakout freshman season, got hurt, and then came back strong last year. I'll say the guy that impressed me the most, other than Jordan Tyson, who Arizona State wide receiver, he'd probably be the best. I think he's the best player right now. And if I had to say like who's going to be the first player drafted from this group next year, I think it's going to be Jordan Tyson. Like he's got a lot of skills, but I think the player who impressed me the most was Mikhail Lemon from USC. Like I watched about a dozen players, and like he was the guy that stuck out. He catches everything, man. Like he's this guy, like he's this little like jitterbug, like in and out, can separate. I think he's got like a good enough speed to like stretch defenses vertically too. I just think that there's a lot of nuances to his game in terms of like just being able to separate and get open. I think that would be pretty intriguing for the Steelers offense to kind of drop that type of skill set into the bucket. I think he's got to get a little bit stronger playing through contact. That was one of the big weaknesses that I found on his film, but he's played a lot in the slot, but I see no reason to suggest like the reps and the games that I looked against press coverage. Like I see no reason to suggest he can't play outside next year. So yeah, Mikhail Lemon definitely
maybe
keep note of him.
Just to reunite Lenoris Sellers and Nick Harbor in the NFL potentially as well.
Yeah.
Harbor's what, like 6'5"? I mean, I get it. Like I think
built like DK.
Yeah, that's why I was just saying I get it. Like if you're looking for something that complements as opposed to a parallel for what he brings, but my goodness, I'm intrigued by what next year looks like for those two at South Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, Sellers is just this like moldable ball of traits, man. Like you see some of the stuff that he can do in terms of like the sack avoidance and things like that. It's freaky stuff. I think there's just not a lot of him getting beyond his first read on film. And some of that is just because after the first read, it's pretty much like, I'm just going to go make things happen with my legs. And that's, it works right now. Right. But you want to see some things develop in that regard, just him becoming a more, polished passer from the pocket. But there's a lot of good stuff to work with. I mean, I'm definitely pretty high on like his upside. And I mentioned, Tyson too. The only reason I didn't include him really in the article, just like he was the one guy that I honestly like am going to come out of the summer scouting period with like a first round grade on. And I just think the Steelers are going to be, hyper fixated on getting a quarterback in the first round next year. So it didn't really make sense for me to put him in the article. They're not taking a receiver in round one. They got to get a quarterback. So, but a lot to like with Tyson. If you haven't seen him play, he's a nice player too.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, trying to look for somebody to go with DK. Well, good transition. Kobe asked about our thoughts on DK. Curious as to get your thoughts on where DK stacks up compared to the rest of the league. Where do you think that you would rank him in terms of receivers? I'll give my thoughts first on this because I think he's a wide receiver one, but I think the difference is between him and like the upper echelon wide receiver ones like a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. Those guys, their games are much more expansive. I think that's what like separates them as opposed to like DK's a wide receiver one who can't do everything that like a number one can do. I think he can be the number one option in a pass game, but you can't ask him to do the entire job. If that makes sense. But in terms of ranking him like lead dude, like I feel like where he's at in terms of tier receiver, it gets to a point where it's just about like flavor or preference, or if that guy's on your team, you're ranking him higher than other guys. Like I think you can make the argument anywhere from probably like, would I have him as high as like 12? Probably not. I would probably say somewhere in like the 15 to 22, 25 range. But like, again, I think if he's on a lot of Steelers fans are going to probably overrate him, and there's people that are going to underrate him, and it becomes flavor like the tier that he's in. So I don't know. What's your thought on DK?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like in that same exact range, right? Like I'm not a huge fan of like just ranking guys like 1 to 30 or 1 to 32 or whatever, just because I feel like what you're talking about is like, it really depends on what type of role are they playing in the offense. You know, what are you asking them to do?
Well, that's
I mean,
another
there's
part too. I think so many people just look at the production of these guys,
yeah,
and you got to understand like they're playing a position that is directly attached to how well another position is playing. So,
yeah,
like without going back and watching the film and seeing like, oh, this guy, he's running wide ass open, but he's not getting the football. That's not a product to him. That's a product of the
yeah.
quarterback. He did his job as good as he possibly could have done. So, but yeah, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you could drop like the AJ Browns, the Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chase, like those type of guys. Like you could drop them into any system and like they become the
Mhm.
system. And like that's kind of like what you're talking about with the elite guys. I kind of think that like DK is more like he's like a tier 3 guy in my opinion. He's probably around like I think he's like top 20-ish if I had to like just say okay, these are the best receivers in the league. Like who would you like to have going into next season? Like I would probably pick 18-ish guys or so before I would get to DK. But at the same time, like it's difficult because what constitutes as a wide receiver one? Like one of the things I look for is like, do you tilt the coverage? It's like, do defenses have to account for you like with extra safety help, or do you change like the coverage contour on the back end? And he does that. But like what you're saying is like he can't do some of the other things that like other receivers can do. It's like, his route tree is basically streaks. I'm going to run a 9 route or I'm going to run a slant.
Mhm.
And you know what the
That's just
production's going to be with that. Like he's going to stretch the field vertically. He's going to give you a bunch of explosive plays. But like there's not a lot in between there. Like that's really like where he really excels at a top tier level, which is just different than a lot of the other guys. So, I mean, even from like a raw production standpoint, like I don't think that that's the best way to gauge who the best receivers are in the league. Cause like,
Mhm.
situation dictates that, quarterback play dictates that. But like DK's only had 110. He's only been, I think, in the top 10 or top 12 in receiving yards one time. And it was like his second year in the league. So it's like
Mhm.
there's not really any like statistical or like, in my opinion, like skill set basis for having him in that kind of like top 10, top 12 range. I think like top 20 is fine though. And you can make qualms about whether the cost to acquire him with the contract and the second round pick is too much to give up a player like that. For me, I'm just more so looking at that like, okay, how are we going to build around him? Like what do we need to kind of like what complementary
Mhm.
skill sets are we going to use to kind of fill in the blanks for what he doesn't do and try to maximize what he does well, which is create explosive plays.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I'm a fan of DK. Like I said, I think he is a wide receiver one, meaning that he can be the number one option for a passing offense. Um, but I also think a part of what you're saying with why he's always maybe been ranked higher than like where the production lines up, or even like
Mm-hmm.
what he's not able to do is I think that the idea of him has always been a little bit greater than what he actually has been up to this point. Like you just see
Well,
the
that's
physical
just
freak that he is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's because of the like it's typecasting is what it is. Like people see him as this big bodied wide receiver, and like you kind of assume that there are certain qualities of his game that translate because of what he looks like, but that's not actually like how he plays. Like if you actually go look at like the numbers, like he's been one of the least effective like contested catch guys over the past like 3 seasons. Like, and that's
Mhm.
just like he's not a 50-50 ball guy, whereas like most people probably think like, oh, he's 6'4", 6'5". He's got this enormously long wingspan. He's rocked up, has like, I mean, the dude looked like I've watched like some of his videos like this off season of like him training and everything. Like the dude literally looks like he's like 4% body fat. I mean, it's incredible like
Yeah.
the type of physique that he
Mhm.
has. But I mean, I also want to say this, like, you know, would I be betting on him to be like a drastically different player than the one that he's been throughout the first 6 years of his career? No, because I think that the sample size would tell you you're foolish to do that. But could he jump a tier in a different situation? Like if they get the right quarterback in here, like maybe like next year or something like that, could he jump a tier? Could he expand his game? Like, I don't want to say that that's completely 100% off the table. I think that you look at like the move that the Steelers made. I think that they're betting on that there is a little bit more in the tank there to be, kind of tapped into. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but DK is a really he's a good player. Like he's a valuable
Yeah.
player. He's somebody that you
Absolutely.
want on your offense. It's really just about probably most of the qualms that people have mainly about cost.
And honestly, not only just getting the quarterback in place, but like you mentioned, with getting another piece at the wide receiver position opposite side, is going to be obviously big for that too. All right,
sure.
switching. That was an addition made to the team. Tina wants to know about a departure and how it's going to domino effect here. How does the Minkah departure affect Deshon Elliott's role, do you think? Did the Steelers' trust in Minkah allow for Elliott to play closer to the line of scrimmage, and will that change following his departure?
Well, I don't necessarily think that Elliott's role will change a ton. I think, early downs, like he's probably going to be playing closer to the box like he was last year. The big thing is, I think the Steelers are just betting on like Thornhill, at least on early downs, to be able to play center field and not kill them. Like they probably viewed that maybe like Minka's talent or, what they're paying for that role in the defense wasn't worth it for them financially. And they're not getting that type of investment back. We plug a cheaper piece in and maybe like he's not the caliber of player that Minkah is, but like he just doesn't hurt you. And you can get away with like that on defense because safety is not necessarily a premium position. I can understand that, especially if like Ramsey and like they use Ramsey the way that I think he should be used at this point in his career. I definitely think that there's a place where the defense could be more flexible, more, have more teeth to it than it did even last year. But the Elliott thing is a good point. I mean, him being allowed pretty much to like solely play in the box, and like he wasn't even playing in some of their like sub packages early last year. Like the things that they were asking him to do in coverage, like that it was a role that they've tried a bunch of like they've tried different safeties in over the past 5-6 years. He was definitely the best player at that role, but like maybe they are going to put more on his plate. Who knows how that's going to affect like his performance? But I think Deshon, he proved last year like he's one of the best box safeties in the league. Like I think what he does and what Minkah was even doing last year for the Steelers are vastly different things, and I probably wouldn't try to expand his role much more than what he was last year just because the returns were so good.
Yeah, my favorite questions are ones that like take my mind to a place that it wouldn't have gone before. And this wasn't something that was on my mind, to be honest with you. Probably should have been. But I think the thing with Deshon Elliott is like we've seen him do more in different places than what the Steelers asked him to do last year. And I don't know if I'd like consider him like a journeyman necessarily. I mean, but he had multiple stops before the Steelers, and there's a reason. And there's a reason that he was never for long in one place. I think he's a good player. I think he is extremely good at what the Steelers asked him to do. I think when you stretch him out beyond that, you get a guy that moves around in the league a little bit. So I would be concerned about the return on investment if you start asking him to do a bunch more than what he did last year. And go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when they signed the extension, it's like, to me, it's just a no brainer because you already know you're going to like, if you get that type of play from him, like what we saw last year, you get that again this year in that same exact role. Like it's good value, like 100%. I think that that's worth that type of contract to fill that specific role. And like what you're saying is like, sometimes like I think with safeties, I think you have to be versatile enough to wear a bunch of different hats. Like in today's NFL, I think the best defenses, you have to be able to play a bunch of different roles. But like in order to get somebody that is truly like above average at a multitude of different things, you're going to have to invest like something that I'm just not comfortable investing in a safety with where the Steelers are from a roster construction and roster building standpoint. Like I'm just not interested in trying to upgrade over somebody like Deshon Elliott. It's just not something that I'm, pursuing, or I think they should be pursuing. So yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for me is like because I wrote a big article about this for Steelers Now earlier this week about just like the different ways that the Steelers would use Minkah. I think that there's kind of this like there's a lot of like bad narratives about Minkah, like that have formulated over the past, couple weeks about like his play last year, which wasn't up to like his standard. But I do think that like people probably don't understand all the things that they were asking him to do, like on third down and specifically like coming down to the intermediate level of the field. Like their whole defensive philosophy is stop the run on first down. We want to get to third down. We're going to play zone coverage. We're going to rush 4. We're going to get him in the middle of the field. And like, we're going to force we're going to have him take away throwing lanes, like in between the numbers, or we're going to force the ball in his direction because we know he's such a good tackler. and like he has the range to kind of make tackles short of the sticks. And like those aren't like turnovers necessarily, which is like a lot of people's complaints about him. The turnover production hasn't been there. But having somebody that like having strong like hook curl players when you're like a primary cover 3 team, like it's not a luxury, like it is a necessity. And like who plays that role next year, like is a great interest of mine. And like that's like the number one thing I'll probably be watching for once we get to camp or once we get to like preseason is like who's playing that role and like how good are they at it. And I'm just very curious on who it's going to be.
Well, I think some of what you said there, might have answered what my follow-up was going to be, because I was going to ask based off, Minka's usage the last couple of years, not necessarily, because I still think he was playing well, obviously, for all the reasons that you said. I do get the argument, though, that even if that's the case, that price tag is only warranted at that position if you do have the ball production. So whether that's on him or the utilization, whether it's on him or the utilization of him, I could still understand the argument towards moving that contract if you're not getting the most out of him. But based off what they were asking him to do you feel like Juan Thornhill is somebody that can fill that job? They got to add a body regardless, but does it need to be a Simmons, a Blackman, somebody that could start, or do you feel like Thornhill can do that job?
Like Blackman would be the interesting one to me, because I do think that like he's done couple reasons. One, he played under Gus Bradley. Like a lot of what the Steelers do on third down with like the cover 3 stuff, like that's what Gus has been doing since like the dinosaurs were around. So he's played some single high. He's also played some strong safety. I think he's a better player than Thornhill personally. With Thornhill, the thing with me is the play in Cleveland was just really tough, because not only was he not able to stay healthy, it just wasn't ever the same as what it was like his last year in Kansas City, where I thought he was an ascending player. The missed tackles are a problem.
I'm not saying that this is a good thing. I don't think he was interested in playing there. Like I think he checked out very early in his tenure there.
There were a lot of business decisions being made on the Browns defensive side of the ball last year. So I do agree with that. And sometimes like players get put in a different situation. They're in a better like supporting cast. Like I do think that there are probably more players like this in the NFL than I think maybe we talk about, that take it up a notch when they're in situations where they actually feel like the team's competent. Like you watch some of these bad teams and things like that. That's why I'm always so impressed when like new coaches come in and like their teams are really bad from a talent perspective and they play extremely hard. Like I think back to like Dan Campbell's Lions, like the first year he was there, they were atrocious, but they played really hard. You watch like some of these teams once we get to December and stuff, like the Browns last year, and like there's just a lot of people going through the motions. So Thornhill kind of maybe he has that type of revitalization this year with the Steelers, but I'm definitely worried about him having to play this much for sure. My hope is just that like no big mistakes, like don't allow a bunch of big plays, and it's going to be okay.
We did get a TJ Watt question. I was curious if we would, and I feel like it is worth talking about just because it's worded a little bit differently. They want to know about the potential. Zion asked about the potential compensation in a trade and what's the minimum of pick/caliber player that it would take for us to be willing to part with him. I guess my thing before we even get to that is, are you even interested in that? Like, does the compensation matter to you? Is there not a world where they should trade him? Because I think for me, the thing is, while it's not the side that I would have been on, I want them to pay TJ. You could have made the argument before the offseason started that if you really wanted to like reset this thing, then you don't do that and you reset this thing. But now that you've gone about the offseason the way that you have, what sense does it make to do that now? Like, you need TJ Watt on this roster given the other moves that have been made. No? Otherwise, what sense did it make to do what they did up to this point?
So here's my question. I've seen what you're saying about the moves that they've made, and like it doesn't make sense to trade him now. am I tripping, or what has changed about the Steelers like Super Bowl chances this year in the last like month that is kind of formulating that narrative? Or maybe I just don't agree with it. Like, I don't think, are they a drastically better team now than they were a month ago?
Well, I
Is
don't
it
think
because of the
drastically.
Ramsey thing?
I mean, but I'm thinking the internal hope of the team is either on par or higher with the additions that they've made. Externally, it might not be, but you don't like. I don't
Yeah.
think that they make a trade for DK Metcalf. I don't think that they do the Aaron Rodgers thing and sit around and wait around. I don't think that they go about business the way that they have getting Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. Like, I don't think that they do those type of things. I don't want to use the term all in, because clearly they're not all in.
Yeah.
If you're cautiously thinking about not signing players to not affect the comp formula, you can't say you're all in. So I'm not going to use that term. But I think that they have the intention of trying to be incredibly competitive in 2025, whether we agree that they have the roster to do so. So I don't know how trading TJ now makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's where things kind of split, is like, do I think that they would even consider it? No, I don't. But I don't necessarily agree with the idea that, like, just because the Steelers went out and like traded Minka for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, that they like that should alter their plan, like, so a team's plans in this position to trade TJ or not trade TJ. To me, it's not even like I don't think that this is like as open and closed as a lot of people are like making it to be. And like, I think that it's kind of fascinating to think about it, because so like this year, the Steelers over under is like 8.5 wins. Okay. Like we can say, okay, they're going to be competitive. They're going to push for a playoff spot. We probably know what's going to happen when they get there. There's a very hard ceiling on this team, right? Like, we can probably all rationally agree with that. Next year, we assume it's going to be a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks don't win Super Bowls, so you're not winning a Super Bowl next year. So then, like, TJ's 33, and like I would still expect like him to still be a very good player at this point. I went back and looked for a piece that I wrote like a week or two ago. I went back and looked. There has never been a pass rusher over the age of 33 to be top 10 in pressures and top 10 in sacks since 2006. So that's kind of my thought process, is like, he's going to have this gigantic contract, right? But when you're ready to win, which is going to be hopefully 2 years from now, is he even going to be the caliber of player to like live up to that contract, or to be like the alpha that leads a 4-man pass rush to go win a Super Bowl? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's even more so questions. And this is probably going to upset some people, but I have more questions about how his game is going to age than a Myles Garrett. I think because he's probably going to have to transform and become more than just like a speed rusher as he gets older. And so if you have questions about how that conversion is going to go, is he going to be able to transition his game in that way? And heck, we haven't even seen him do what we're expecting him to do this upcoming season, which is, just switch sides more often and, be in different alignments and stuff like that. So go ahead.
That's like some of the examples I went back and found, right? Like, went back and found Cam Wake had a couple really good seasons, like when he was like 33, 34, 35.
What a name. Yeah.
Terrell Suggs, same thing. But it's like, even the guys that you're talking about, they're different style of rushers. And like, there's a reason that like Cam was able to put together the season that he did even last year as like a pass rusher. Is like, power typically stays longer than speed does. It's just like, that's just how it works in the trenches. And I'm not necessarily thinking that TJ is going to fall off or anything like that to where you'll regret the contract. Like, I'm not even as worried about like regretting the contract this time next year or this time 2 years from now. I'm just like, is it going to be good enough still to help them win a Super Bowl in 2 years? And if you can't say that with 100% certainty, I don't know why you wouldn't at least like be open to the fact that like maybe you should be trying to sell and get an asset for somebody that could, if you know that you're not going to win a Super Bowl the next 2 years anyway. Now, obviously, what we're saying, like what I'm saying, is not the way the organization feels. So that's where like the disconnect probably is. Like, I know the Steelers probably think that they can win it all this year.
I have an opinion about how people in the organization feel about this situation specifically. And this is just like my opinion based off some things that I've heard, but honestly, just like how I know that they go about business. I think Omar would be willing to trade TJ. I don't think Tomlin and Rooney would, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think if they were just like, "Hey, Omar, we trust you as the GM. Do what you want to do," I think that things look very differently for the Steelers roster right now than they do.
Yeah. No, and like that's why it's always hard to like, separate GM from head coach, from owner, like organizations in general. Like it's hard to kind of parse through like who has the control over, different areas of the roster and how I mean, we know that Tomlin has the largest voice in the building. Like I don't think that anybody like needs us to say that, right? Like I definitely believe that for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I said, I don't necessarily. I think it's an uncomfortable thing all around, right? Because you have a player who has been. I mean, TJ is one of the best Steelers of my lifetime. Like 100%, absolute first ballot Hall of Famer in my opinion. Deserves like everything that he's got coming to him. He deserves like another mega payday in my opinion. I'm not even necessarily arguing like, oh, I wouldn't pay TJ $40 million. I'm like, my question is like, are we sure that the Steelers should be the one doing it? Like, does it actually make sense for them to do it? And that goes back to like the whole like timeline conversation where like I'm kind of confused by some of the moves that they've made this season because it's like, what do they envision the team looking like when they're ready to compete again? And like, that's kind of one of the things I'm kind of really skeptical on with like the organization or the brass right now, I guess you could say.
Real quick, I want to check this. This isn't related. We can come back to this, but it kind of just, as we were talking about voices in the building and how decisions are made. Steelers Stan said, "Can one of you explain why Colbert thought it would be a good idea to draft a quarterback in round 1, knowing he's retiring after the draft? Why would you not leave that decision up to the successor?" Is it not like completely known by everybody at this point? And this isn't me like making fun of this question. I just assumed that it was well known based off the comments following it. Like Kenny Pickett was a Rooney handpicked selection. Like people had to sign off on it, I'm sure, and like whatever, or he had to sign off on it, but like I'm sure he got opinions. The quote afterwards was, "We weren't going to pass on another great pick quarterback the way my family did with Dan Marino." Like that was not, they were taking Kenny Pickett because of Art Rooney II's desire to do so. So Kevin Colbert aside, that was going to be the selection. And this is somebody that's been very critical of the end of Kevin Colbert's tenure, by the way. I just, for that one, same. I don't know how much we can put on it.
Yeah, same. I think it's really tough too, because I think that because of Colbert's struggles, we'll call it like the last like 5-6 years at least of his tenure as general manager of the Steelers, I think they've kind of they've solely blamed him for the Kenny Pickett debacle, and it wasn't just him. Like you mentioned, like the pressure from the ownership, like, and the way that it's been described to me is like there wasn't a lot of like pushback necessarily on like, we don't want to do this. So it's not as if he was the only person kind of pining for him to be the future of the Steelers. Now, I don't really know that I have a strong take one way or another. I don't think it's a good thing when you're drafting a quarterback and immediately like changing over like major voices in the organization immediately after, because I just think that doesn't lead to success very often. I mean, the Bears did this with Fields a time or two. They just did it again with Caleb Williams, like firing a coach a year after he's drafted. But I mean, Tomlin, with him being like the main voice of the Steelers for quite some time now, I guess like I don't really care as much about the fact that they did it. I never really liked the player that they picked necessarily. It just didn't make any sense from a evaluation standpoint. It was nothing against Kenny as a person. I didn't think he could play at the NFL level, and that's just really unfortunately been the case. So,
and the last thing that I want to say, just in terms of like, the overarching voices or, whatever, who I agree, obviously with Tomlin in general. The one thing though, that I think has been interesting, and I think goes to show that it's either more collaborative now, or, when we went from Colbert to the Con and Weidel transition, in terms of the GM role and what's happening in terms of the draft specifically. In that, we saw them start to target, I think, attack the draft in a different way, which either says there was a transition from Tomlin himself, or those two are, more involved with the draft than I think fans that want to put everything on Tomlin's plate would like to admit. Because whether the picks are working out or not, they're targeting higher like they're not just taking Najee. They wouldn't have taken Najee Harris in 2021, right? Like they understand the value and where to attack it in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree that the prioritization of the trenches has been greater now than it probably has like 90% of Tomlin's tenure. So you could probably, I mean, I think attributing that to some of the new voices in the room is makes sense. I also think that, and this kind of does go back to some of the complaints that I feel like are valid from the fan base, specifically about like the Steelers having like a routinely small coaching staff and like they don't make a lot of change. It's kind of like a mom and pop shop at times. I do think that getting voices from other organizations who have just done things differently, especially if those voices have had success, has value because they bring about different ideas. They make you change the way that you think about the game. And I think that there's been a lot of times I feel like in the past, 5-6 years where the Steelers have felt stale in certain areas, certain regards, and kind of like slow to change and slow to adapt. And I'm not sure that that would be the case if maybe they were a little bit more expansive in their search to like add more, qualified voices in the room. So, yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point. Things are, to me, I think the next thing is, what do they envision the offense looking like next year? That's kind of been the thing that I've thought about the most because I'm of the opinion that this offense has holes, but if we don't see like a good notable improvement, I think that the offensive coordinator position probably needs to be switched over if this offense isn't like competent this year.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know that I have that. Like, you look at last year, I understand it didn't always look pretty, but I think you had taken into consideration the personnel. They were 11th in total offense before the last month of the season, finished 16th. You look at like on paper the players that were on the offense. I think that's overachieving a little bit. And I feel like there's reason to believe that with Aaron Rodgers, even this version of Aaron Rodgers, they should be like they can do everything in this offense with him at quarterback. Like they had to literally throw out probably 10 to 15%, maybe even more of the playbook last year because of Russell Wilson being the quarterback. Now that doesn't have to happen.
I don't know. I don't know that it doesn't have to happen. I mean, we'll see about that.
Okay.
But I hope that that's not the case. I mean, I think that the best version of this offense this year would be that Aaron is like more receptive to playing more of like a point guard and distribute role where it's like, hey, we know that you're not this like springy guy from the pocket anymore and you're not going to be able to give us all like the second reaction magic, but can you get the ball out at your back foot?
Well, yeah. I mean, if he's not, then you have more concern, not just like on the field, but like off the field. That would obviously go back. Same thing last year, I think is going to happen where you're talking about a tarnished relationship and then things could domino effect from there.
Well, I think that it's worth talking about because I mean, this was kind of the thing with Aaron his last couple years in Green Bay. Like before they brought in LaFleur, like his numbers had kind of dropped off. They ended up getting rid of Mike McCarthy. There's a little bit of a power struggle, but then he did buy into like the stuff that LaFleur was trying to do offensively. Now there was always like, some kind of a power struggle, but they were able to like make it work and he went back-to-back MVPs. That's off the table at 40 something years old now. But if he does trust Art and he does want to play within the system, like that is, still on the table. But I mean, like even last year, I mean, you go back and watch the film and there are like certain concepts that you can say like that are literally handpicked from LaFleur's Packers passing game and dropped into the Jets passing game. And they're just like, he's just unwilling to like pull the trigger or like wants to play a specific way. So, yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for me is like, what would they have to do this year offensively, in your opinion? Like, let's just say like total points or like points per drive or whatever. Like, where would they have to rank for you to be like, yeah, I trust Arthur Smith? Like, how would you have to feel about Arthur Smith to where you would trust
Somebody
him?
actually asked us this exact question. Okay, so I understand why you're asking that, obviously, and that's a bit different question. Having the conversation of what we thought this offense could be. I mean, you look at like Denver last year was 10th in points, like 22 and a half, somewhere around there. I mean, I think the Steelers could be somewhere around like 12th, 11th, 12th was where Arizona was last year. I think they could get within that range if things go right. In terms of like the quarterback thing, that's interesting because like Arthur Smith's been the offensive coordinator where it's like if you don't have that dude at quarterback, his offense at least gives you like a baseline. Would I trust him though with what I think is supposed to be the next franchise? I think I need more time to think about it. Like there's no body of work, right? Like the youngest quarterback that we saw him, like the only quarterback that he drafted and then you would have said like developed was Desmond Ridder. Right? Like, so I don't know. They haven't made that much of an investment into any quarterback that he's had.
Yeah. And I think it really, for me, is just, I think that this offense, the struggle for him to kind of evolve makes me really, really hesitant to pair him with a young quarterback. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with like result. It's not necessarily results based on like what he was able to do with Ridder, like what he was able to do with Russ. It's just like schematically. I think that, you know, we've seen so many teams that are like kind of transitioning away from this like wide zone and boot offense. And I just don't know if there's enough in the passing game to make me feel comfortable about dropping like the next potential franchise guy. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying too, is like, you don't want to keep changing. You don't want to draft a guy and then immediately have to like change like the voices in the locker room or the voices in his head, you know, with the offensive coordinator, whether it's the head coach, things like that. That's why I'm of the opinion too, like not that Tom was on the hot seat or anything like that, but if they're going to let Tomlin, you know, pick another franchise quarterback, then they need to let him see it through. Like he deserves like 2 years to see like at least on how that project's going. So, you know, I don't know. Like I think with Art, it's different. It's definitely a different conversation than like Canada, who was just like so like woefully unqualified that it was like kind of like a laughingstock situation. Like Art feels like to me that he might just be like the 20th best offensive coordinator, and like there's stability. Like, you know what he's gonna bring, but I don't know that he's like.
Well, that's why I said like I think if you're a team that knows you don't have that dude at quarterback, this is the offensive coordinator you're going to get to give you a solid baseline of what you can do offensively. Like, I think that his offense kind of masks not having that position to a degree. Now, it significantly caps what the ceiling of that offense is going to be.
Yeah.
But, man, I mean, I don't know. You kind of put my mind in a pretzel now in terms of him being the offensive coordinator when they get the next dude.
I mean, a lot of it's going to have to do with, like, what happens this year. But I just know that the Steelers in general, I mean, they have long leashes, man, for coordinators. So, I don't know. It kind of – I don't know. I think things that have to be kind of bad for them to, like, move on.
Yeah. And honestly, like he got some looks head coaching-wise this offseason. If they go out and are somewhere where I'm saying I think they could be like 10th to 12th in offense, who's to say he's even here and we're having this conversation? Yeah, which then becomes a scary proposition of them hiring another offensive coordinator. And what are the chances they're going to be better?
That is a good point. That is a good point, actually. Yeah. Like, it could be worse. Like, we've seen it be worse. So,
yeah, I don't know. Good stuff. Bit longer of an episode as it typically happens when it is DB and I on a Friday now and lets us loose. But DB, good stuff as always. Tell the people they can find you.
Yep, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. You can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. I'm actually doing my mailbag episode or my mailbag article this week. So if you guys want to drop comments or questions in the chat, I will include those in my mailbag on the site. So if you have any questions for me, let me know.
There we go. Be sure to subscribe to SN Plus on the site as well, so you can get in on that live stream again on the 21st. DB, a lot of the stuff that he does on the site also ends up over there too. So subscribe to that. Do not miss out on any of that content from him, Alan, all the other guys. And then, of course, the monthly live streams that we do again, that's going to be on the 21st week of training camp. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you're here on YouTube. That's completely free to do, as well as subscribing and leaving a 5-star review on your favorite audio platform, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast's from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Derrick Bell and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.